So today we're going to do a fun story. I really like this story. And this is about a mail carrier. His name is Sam Fonseca and his companion, Gruffy McDonald. This is a friend who meets him as he goes along his walking route in downtown Thibodaux. And they go together every day. They have lunch together. And then when Fonseca walks back to the post office, Gruffy goes back to his house, right? So this is basically how the story goes. Now, you've got a little bit of background information here. And then everything else that we know Fonseca tells us. And again, that's how storytelling is going to work. You're going to interview people, and so everything you know comes from them. You're not going to have a gigantic direct quote for your story. You're going to go through what they told you, and you're going to zero in on the head and heart statements that are going to be your direct quotes. And that's the heart of your story now. Remember that. That's what helps us to get to know people. That's what we could not know if they didn't tell us. In other words, anything paraphrased. A paraphrase is an indirect quote. It's when we might rewrite some of it. A lot of it is going to be the person's exact words, but you don't have to put quotation marks around them. You may combine elements of a couple of sentences. There's a lot of reasons why, but indirect quotes, paraphrases, are things that we could see if we were there. So I'm going to give you a little bit of direction here, but I want you to go through and pick at least, I think 3 is a good number of direct quotes here for the story. 3 head and heart statements. And again, if you have a head and heart statement of a few sentences, that's always even better. So don't feel like you have to break anything up. Don't mess with what people tell you. Don't try to consolidate it. Don't try to pull things out of it when it's a good head and heart statement. When it's something you can paraphrase, again, you can rearrange that a little bit for the sake of flow in your story. Maybe people repeat themselves. Maybe you can say it in a more concise manner when it's paraphrased. But when it's a direct quote, when it's a heart and head statement, that's when you don't want to fool with it, right? You want to, if he has a few good sentences, use that chunk. That's what I call it, a chunk, right? There might be a better word for it. I haven't found one yet, but we'll go ahead and do that. And so here is your story, right? So remember, your paraphrases are those things we could see if we were there. If we were watching from a distance, so I'll go through and we'll see. So this is all paraphrased, right? These are some things that we can add in our story. But this is what Fonseca tells us, that Gruffy stands outside the gate of his house where Gruffy lives. Now, remember, you need to, in any paraphrased information, for sure, you need to fix the AP style. So for the address, if I'm going to say 7:30 a.m., paraphrase, I don't need to say each morning. It's quicker to say a.m. in the writing, in our digital storytelling, right? So I can paraphrase some of this, right? Fonseca passes by his house, by Gruffy's house or McDonald's house, and McDonald joins him and they deliver mail together along Fonseca's route in downtown Thibodaux. Sometimes McDonald even helps him push the mail car, right? So I can paraphrase that, right? And then you can do head and heart. Do you have any head and heart statements here? Not really. These are mostly things that we could see. Here is some paraphrase, like about what time they eat, right? And this is actually something it's kind of an in-between one. It's a little bit different. We eat the same thing every day. Now, if I were videoing this story, honestly, I probably would have this part of the video because it gives me a little bit of insight into their routine, which is just the same thing every day. The fact that Rox Martin makes the best homemade burgers in town, that's an opinion statement. And Gruffy, what he gets and what Gruffy gets, we get a good half hour to sit at the bar, right? So you can These are kind of in between, but you can, if I'm going to say Rox makes the best burgers, I need to attribute that, right? I need to tell people that. And so here's some head and heart statements, right? How boring it would be if before Gruffy could join him, before that happens, right? They have great conversations. They talk about all kinds of stuff, right? And so then we find out who Gruffy actually is. Now, to be honest, this would make a better feature story, which we'll cover later. But for right now, we're going to do an inverted pyramid story. But once you get past the first 2 paragraphs, then you can go ahead and give us some indirect quotes. What will we see? What did they think, right? What could we see happen? What do we think? That's a good way to kind of flow with the story. Because most of the time when you interview people and they tell you things, they're going to tell you something that they know, right? Maybe a fact that we could all know if we looked it up. And then how do they feel? And also you can conduct your interviews that way. You know, for example, if I were talking to him, I'd say, so Mr. Fonseca, tell me a little bit about your route, where you go and all that. And so that would be some things I could see if I were there. And what do you think about on the route? Do you have how do you pass the time, right? And so that could be maybe what he thinks and what he feels. So you can conduct your interviews in such a way that you already start to organize your story that way. So here's some other stuff about Gruffy now. Once we know who Gruffy is, then, and you can do that in a feature story, we might hold back a little bit, but you can also, in a direct story, the way we're going to do, you can let people know right away who Gruffy is. That's okay. If we have time, we might kind of go back and do a little feature on this one. But this would make a great feature top and kind of story because it's a human interest and it's a fun story. So you've got some great direct quotes in here woven throughout, and you can kind of decide how you're going to do it. So have some fun. Actually, I'll just give you a little kind of tidbit here. I changed some of the names, but this really happened, what I'm showing you. There was a mail carrier in the town where I lived, and he had a dog who met him all along the way. And they ate at the restaurant. So I just changed a little bit of the details, but this is based on a real event. And that was probably one of the most fun stories that I've ever done. So anyway, you have fun. Let me know if you have any questions.